When Emily bought the fear-haunted Sept Hotel for just $10,000, I never imagined the ghosts it would awaken, not just in the hotel but within my own family. I should have stopped her. I should have known better, but I didn't. My daughter Emily, in her usual stubborn way, bought that damn hotel without even thinking it through. A dilapidated, broken-down relic of the past, sitting in the heart of Salem. I tried to warn her, told her it was a terrible idea, one that would bring nothing but trouble, but she was set. She was always set. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you sat her listening from. She was desperate for my approval. I could feel it in her every word, every glance she threw my way, trying to prove she wasn't the screw-up I always made her feel like. I should have seen it then. I should have realized that in trying to prove herself to me, she was willing to make any reckless decision. And this was the worst. She bought that hotel in September of 2025. No plan, no research, just her big, stupid idea that she could fix it, turn it into something beautiful. And me? I sat there, in my silence, thinking she'd finally screw up enough for me to fix it. But no, this time, it was my mess too. The hotel had charm. Sure, old world charm. The kind of charm that fools people into thinking there's some romance to it. But as soon as I walked inside, I felt it, the wrongness of it all. It wasn't just the peeling walls, the rotting wood, or the dust so thick you could carve your name into it. No, it was something else. The weight in the air, the coldness that made my skin crawl. At first I told myself I was being paranoid, but after a few days of walking around that place, I could hear it, the scratching. It was faint at first, just a tiny noise that lingered in the background. But it grew, and I couldn't ignore it. One morning I walked through the front hall, alone. The floorboards groaned beneath me like the house was alive. Screaming, the air was thick. I felt like I was being watched. I wanted to ignore it, like I always did with the bad feelings, the things that didn't quite make sense. But something was pulling me forward, making my feet move against my will. And that sips when I saw it. The wall. A brick, slightly out of place, a tiny crack in the facade. Instinctively I reached for it. My fingers brushed the cold stone, and that feeling hit me. I don't know what it was. A gut feeling. A warning. But I didn't listen. I pulled the brick out, a loose, ancient thing. My heart pounded in my chest as I uncovered what was behind it. A small compartment, hidden for God knows how long. Inside, a dusty old ledger, tattered and old, as if it had been buried for centuries. The moment I opened it, I knew my worst fears were true. The first page held a name that made my blood run cold. Edward Creighton, the hotel's original owner. I've heard that name before, not in a good way. I kept flipping, the pages heavy with history and money. Large sums, transactions that made my stomach twist, payments tied to criminals. Mobsters, the kind of people I used to put behind bars. One name stood out, Malcolm Jenkins. A name I never thought I'd see again. A high-profile arms dealer whose operations had slipped under the radar when I was working as a DA. I remember being told to back off, told that some things were just too dangerous. Well, here it was, written in black ink, tied to that damn hotel. I slammed the ledger shut, heart racing. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just some old book. This was a direct line to the syndicate, the people I thought I'd left behind when I retired. The same criminals I failed to stop. I needed to tell Emily. I had to. But when I found her in the back, grinning like a damn child, showing off the renovation plans to the contractors like she was playing house, it hit me she didn't know. She had no idea what she was messing with. I told her about the ledger, the names, the transactions. I told her it was more than just an old hotel, that it was a trap, that they were still watching, but she just looked at me blankly. "Dad, you stir overreacting," she said, her voice dripping with frustration. "It's just an old ledger, a relic. Who cares?" "Who cares? You should, Emily." I wanted to scream it, but I didn't. I could feel it in my chest, that sinking feeling. I was losing her not just to the hotel, but to them, to that syndicate that had been operating under the surface for so long. Her face softened, but the stubbornness in her eyes was stronger than anything I could say. "Dad, let me do this. Let me fix it. But how could I let her? How could I let her fall for it? I stood there, staring at the ledger and then back at her. I said, my voice quieter now. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was real. And I had to stop it. Before it consumed us both. The days that followed were a blur of frustration and uncertainty. Emily was relentless. She had this way of shutting me out, like I didn't matter anymore. And this hotel, it became her obsession. The more I tried to get through to her, the more she pulled away. I was trying to warn her, but all she saw was a vision. A dream, she said. She didn't see the dark history tied to it, didn't see the connections I was beginning to piece together. All she wanted was a project, a place to call her own. But the house, the hotel, it was changing us. I had to go back. I didn't want to, but something was pulling me there, like the hotel had some kind of magnetic pull on me. Maybe it was the ghosts of my past, not just the hotels. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about the syndicate or the hotel. This was about me too. The guilt I carried with me every single day, the case that had ruined my career, the case I'd ruined. It was just after sunset when I went back. The hotel was still eerily quiet, but this time it felt different. The air was thick, heavier. I could hear the floorboards creak underfoot, the old building groaning like it was waking up. There were voices too, faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. They didn't sound like ghosts, though. They sounded like guilt. I wandered into the back room, where Emily had started working with the contractors. Her excited chatter, her insistence on turning the place around, grated on me. But it wasn't just the noise that was getting under my skin. It was that feeling. The one I kept trying to ignore. That same chill in the air, like someone was watching me. Then the lights flickered. I froze. It wasn't the flicker of a faulty bulb or a wiring issue. It was something more deliberate. A cold, sudden gust of wind swept through the room, making the air feel like it had been touched, as if the building itself was alive, breathing, waiting for something. And then it hit me. My chest tightened. I had to stop her. I had to pull her out of this before it went too far. I couldn't lose her like I lost everything else. My career, my integrity, that case, the one I'd ruined, the one where I'd sent an innocent man to prison. I could still see his face, hear his voice, asking me how I could do it. I didn't have an answer then, and I didn't have an answer now. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me back to reality. A message from Mark Harris, my old mentor. It read, "Call me now." I texted back, "What's SEP's going on?" His reply came immediately. "It sets about the hotel. The syndicate isn't such just tied to it. They own it." I read it again, trying to process the words. Own it? I sat down, my mind racing. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces fell into place. This was bigger than just the hotel. It was bigger than Emily, it was me. I hadn't thought about the syndicate for years. After my retirement, after the scandal, I tried to forget about them, to forget about him. Malcolm Jenkins, the man I could never quite pin down. The man whose name had haunted me even in my sleep. Now I was staring at the wall, the faint scent of mildew in the air, and I realized how connected everything was. My past, the hotel, the people I had once fought against, and my daughter. I couldn't lose her, not like this. But I couldn't save her either, not on my own. I called Mark. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice strained. "I need to know everything." Mark didn't mince words. "It's SEP's bad, Ryan. They SEP been laundering money through the hotel for decades. The ledger you found, it's SEP's just the beginning. There are contracts, bank records, and God knows what else tied up in that place. And Emily, she SEP's in way over her head." The words hit like a slap to the face. Emily can set. I started, but the words stuck in my throat. She sets, just trying to do something good. Mark was silent for a moment. "She doesn't set know what she SEP's walking into. You SEP's got to tell her. You SEP's got to make her understand." I didn't respond. I couldn't set, not yet. "I will be there tomorrow," Mark added, breaking the silence. "We said'll go over everything. Be ready?" The line went dead. And I sat there in the growing darkness, the weight of the hotel pressing down on me. I felt it just like I had in the old days, like the whole world was closing in and I had no way out. The next day came too quickly. Emily, still so hopeful, still so sure that she could fix everything, took one more step towards something she didn't understand. And I couldn't stop her. I couldn't just sit around any longer. The deeper I looked into the hotel, the more twisted it became. The whole place felt like a trap, set up perfectly to catch anyone who got too close. And Emily, she was diving in head first without even realizing it. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't lose her like I lost everything else, my career, my family, and now there was a new layer of guilt, something that sat heavy in my chest every time I looked at her. The idea that I had helped bring all of this on her. She was doing this because of me, because I failed her. She had no idea what was coming, and that made me sick to my stomach. Every second she spent inside that place, the deeper she got entangled with people who had no intention of letting her go. People like Malcolm Jenkins. People like me who had done terrible things and covered them up with enough money to erase the past. I couldn't fix everything, but I could start somewhere. I reached out to Mark Harris that evening. I had to hear the details, get the full picture. When I heard his voice, it felt like a small lifeline in the middle of a storm. I was drowning in guilt and fear, and he might be the only one who could pull me out. Mark, I said, voice hoarse, I can get her out of this. I said, losing her. Mark Sipp's voice was steady, reassuring. You stared not losing her, Ryan, but you have to act now. I I'm meeting you tomorrow. We need to gather everything we can before it's too late. That night I went over the ledger again. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but I couldn't stop. The entries were endless, pages of payments, each one linked to shady deals, to people I thought I'd buried in my past. I kept going through them, looking for something that could connect it all, something that would make it make sense. Then I saw it, a name I didn't expect, Vera Lawson. I knew her, or at least I knew of her. Vera was a private investigator, someone who had been in and out of the circles I used to walk in. We crossed paths once or twice during my time as a DA. But she wasn't just some street-level PI. She had connections. She knew things, saw things that most people didn't. I picked up my phone and texted her, "Meet me. It sets about the hotel in Salem. I need your help." She responded almost immediately, "Be there in an hour." I met her at a small cafe near the docks. One of those places where the walls are dark, the food is always good, and you can't hear anything you don't want to. She was waiting in the back booth, her sharp eyes scanning the room before landing on me. "Ryan," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "What's this about the hotel?" I slid the ledger across the table. The yellowed pages, the cryptic transactions. It was all there. I watched her eyes as she read through it, her face unreadable. I knew she understood. She had to. "This doesn't just lead to a few shady deals," I said, my voice low, steady. "This goes deep. The syndicate is tied to this hotel, and it sets worse than I thought. Money laundering, illegal arms deals, hell, maybe even murder." Vera didn't look surprised. She just leaned back, folding her arms. "You know, been tracking Jenkins for a long time, and seen his connections get tighter, more dangerous. But this," she paused, flipping through the ledger, "this is bigger than I thought." I couldn't stop myself. Got to stop it. Got to stop them from using my daughter." She raised an eyebrow. "Your daughter? You really think she's involved in this?" "She doesn't even know what she's walking into." I slammed my hand on the table. "She's already involved. She's in the middle of it. She doesn't realize it yet, but they pulling her deeper into their mess every day. I can lose her, Vera. I can lose anyone else." Vera nodded slowly, her eyes softening just a bit. "Then you've got to expose them, Ryan. It's the only way. You've got the leverage now. You've got the connections, the money trail. This syndicate is all about power, and they don't like being exposed." "Then help me expose them," I said, my voice growing firmer. "We need the full story. I need to get to Jenkins. He sits the key. But I need evidence, something concrete. Vera leaned in, her eyes narrowing. I can help with that. We got a few contacts who might have the answers you need. But Ryan, you need to be careful. This isn't some small-time operation. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it gets. I didn't care about the danger anymore. My mind was set. I couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, I could fix the future. Stepping in, I said. My jaw tightening. I settled, do whatever it takes. We sat there for a while, the plan forming, the pieces of the puzzle slowly clicking together. We were going to take them down, piece by piece, expose them for who they really were, and if Emily was caught in the crossfire, if she was going to fall victim to this, then I'd burn it all to the ground to save her. The days after that meeting with Vera were a blur of activity and planning. I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or running in circles. Everything about this case felt like quicksand, pulling me deeper the more I tried to fix it. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let Emily be swallowed whole by this mess. Vera kept her word. She came through with a list of names, contacts who had their hands in the dirty business of the hotel. But it wasn't enough. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that the syndicate's tentacles went far deeper than just money laundering or illegal deals. They owned this town. They owned people. And as much as I hated to admit it, they owned my past. I went back to the hotel, but this time I wasn't looking at the walls with hope. I was looking at them with purpose. I had to gather the pieces, the puzzle pieces that could bring down the syndicate for good. I started in the basement, where the real secrets were buried. The contractors had been working there for days, tearing up the floorboards, gutting the place. But the moment I stepped into the dim light of that musty, cold room, something felt off. There were no shadows here, only a cold, oppressive silence. I stood in front of a wall, my hand brushing against the concrete. Something was hidden here. I knew it. It wasn't just the past that was buried in this place. The evidence was here. The true reason the hotel had been protected for so long. I picked up the sledgehammer. The contractors had already started knocking down walls, but there was something deeper in this one, something that felt wrong. My instincts were on fire, and I wasn't about to ignore them. With a swing, the first crack appeared. Another swing, and then the wall crumbled. Behind it, hidden in the darkness, was a safe locked and sealed tight. It wasn't big, but it didn't need to be. It was a fortress guarding secrets I was desperate to uncover. I pulled open the drawer in my pocket and used the old lockpick I'd kept on me since my DA days. It took longer than I'd expected, but finally it clicked. The safe opened with a soft sigh of metal. Inside I found stacks of papers, contracts, photographs, and documents that tied the syndicate directly to the hotel. The first page I grabbed was dated 1997. The year Jenkins had expanded his operations, a handshake agreement with a man I didn't recognize, but whose name sent a jolt through my body. Lucius Blackwell. Another syndicate member, but one with a much stronger influence in the underground. Someone I hadn't realized was connected to this web. I flicked through the documents, each one more damning than the last. Bank statements, wire transfers, all linked to the hotel's operations. But it was the photographs that hit hardest. In one, I could see Jenkins standing alongside Blackwell, shaking hands with the man who had once owned this hotel. The man who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances years ago. The same man whose name was on that ledger. Edward Creighton. This was it. The piece of the puzzle that proved the connection, the smoking gun that tied them all together. But I couldn't let the syndicate find out about it. Not yet. I needed to gather more. I needed to be ready when the time came. But there was one thing I knew for sure now. This wasn't just a fight for my daughter's future. It was a fight for my own redemption. I left the hotel with the documents tucked under my coat, the weight of the evidence making my every step feel heavier. The battle wasn't over yet, but it was close. Later that night, I sat alone in my office going through the documents again. Every detail was in there, every name, every connection, and somewhere in this mess was the key to taking down the syndicate for good. But there was a problem. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that this wasn't just about justice anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about saving Emily. I couldn't let her fall victim to this. I couldn't let her get caught in their trap. She didn't know it yet, but she was already a part of their game. They wanted her. She was too valuable to them. The phone rang, shattering the silence. I didn't need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. Ryan. Mark Sepp's voice was sharp on the other end. We need to meet now. Where? Same place, tomorrow. The call ended just as abruptly as it began. I could feel it, Mark knew. He was as close to the truth as I was. But now it was time to put everything I had into motion. Tomorrow everything changed. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and strategic moves. Everything I had uncovered, the ledger, the contracts, the photographs, was enough to bring the syndicate down, but not enough to make them tremble. Not yet. The more I dug, the more I realized the depths of their operation. They weren't just running an illegal hotel. No, they were using it as a front for a much larger operation. Money laundering, arms dealing, and worse. But they had never expected someone like me to come after them. They had never anticipated me coming back. I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't let Emily continue to fall deeper into their trap. It wasn't just about her now. It was about taking down a syndicate that had been untouchable for far too long. I knew I needed more. More evidence, more leverage. And that's when I got a call from Vera. "Ed, Bev got something," she said, her voice tight. Bev been talking to some of the old hotel staff, the ones who didn't set leave willingly. There's Sepp's one person who knows everything, but they Sepp's scared. I could feel my pulse quicken. Who? Her name's Sepp's Lena. She worked in the Hotel Sepp's office back in the Sepp's 90s. She Sepp's got the keys to the entire operation. But she Sepp's terrified. You need to meet her, Ryan. I didn't need any more convincing. I arranged to meet Vera at a small, quiet diner just outside of Salem. The place was a hole in the wall, but it was the kind of place where you could have a private conversation without anyone eavesdropping. When Vera showed up, she wasn't alone. Lena was with her, an older woman, her face weathered by time and fear. She looked around constantly, her eyes darting as if she expected someone to jump out at any moment. I could see it in her face. She knew too much, and she was scared to death of what would happen if she spoke out. "Lena," I said, my voice calm, trying to ease her nerves, "I need your help. We need to take down the people who said been running this hotel, and we need you to help us." Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak for a moment. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. She finally looked at Vera, then back at me. "I don't want any part of this," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You don't understand. If I tell you what I know, they said'll kill me." "I'm not asking you to fight them, Lena," I said. "I'm not asking you to tell us the truth. You don't have to do this alone anymore." She hesitated, but finally she spoke. "They've been running the hotel for years, but they were hiding something bigger, something no one could ever find," Lena said, her voice trembling. I didn't know what it was at first, but I started putting the pieces together. "There's a ledger that's not like the others. It's the key to everything, the one Jenkins keeps hidden." My heart skipped a beat. "Where is it?" Lena shook her head. "I don't know, I only saw it once. But I heard things. I overheard meetings. Jenkins. He's the one who runs everything. He's been using the hotel to launder money for years. But there's something bigger in that ledger, Ryan. Something more dangerous. He's been planning something big. And if you get that ledger, you can bring him down. But you have to be careful. He's not afraid to hurt anyone." I could feel the weight of her words. This wasn't just about bringing down a hotel. It was about stopping something much more dangerous. Something that could destroy everything. Lena paused, wiping tears from her eyes. "Please, be careful. They said'll come for you. They said'll come for all of us." I stood up, my mind racing. "Where do I find the ledger?" Her eyes flicked to Vera, and Vera nodded slowly, signaling it was time to move forward. "There's a room at the back of the hotel," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The old owner, Creighton, he used it to store all the important documents. The ledger, the files. Jenkins locked it up when he took over. But there's a key. I know where it is." I could feel the adrenaline surging through me. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle, but it was also the most dangerous. If Jenkins found out what I was about to do, I would have no protection left. And if I couldn't get that ledger, everything I had worked for would be in vain. "Where's Sep's the key?" I asked, my voice steady. Lena hesitated, but finally she slid a small metal key across the table. "It's in the safe," she said. "But be careful. The moment you go in there, you still trigger something. You still have their attention." I took the key, feeling its weight in my hand. It was small, but it felt like 1,000 pounds. I turned to Vera. "Let's go." We left the diner quickly, not looking back. As I stepped into the car, the reality of what I was about to do hit me. This wasn't just a hotel. It wasn't just a crime ring. It was everything I had been trying to fix. Everything I had been running from. The truth was within my grasp, but I had to be willing to risk everything to uncover it. The moment we left Lena's diner, I knew things were different. I wasn't just a man searching for justice anymore. I was a man marked. The quiet town of Salem no longer felt like a place to hide. It felt like a place where every shadow could be a threat, where every creaking floorboard could be the sound of someone creeping closer. We drove in silence, the weight of the key in my pocket growing heavier with every mile. The hotel was just ahead. I could see its silhouette against the dying light of the afternoon. The building looked so innocent from a distance. But I knew better. I knew the horrors it housed. The ghosts, both literal and metaphorical. I turned to Vera. Her expression was tight, eyes focused on the road. We hadn't spoken much since we left the diner, but I could feel the tension radiating off her. She knew what was coming. I wasn't the only one who had skin in this game anymore. "You sure about this?" I asked, breaking the silence. She nodded without looking at me. "We don't instead have a choice, Ryan. You stir in it now, so am I. You don't instead have to do this alone." I couldn't help but appreciate that. I had no idea how far this would go, how deep the hole I was digging would end up being, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel completely alone in this fight. The hotel loomed closer, its windows dark and empty, like a sentient creature waiting for us to approach. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was too quiet. It wasn't right. The air felt thick, and I wasn't sure if it was from the impending storm or from something more sinister. When we reached the hotel, the contractors were gone. The parking lot was empty. For a moment I thought we were alone. But then I heard the faintest sound, the soft scrape of metal against concrete. I turned quickly to Vera, but she was already reaching for the door. We both stepped out, alert, instinctively scanning the area. There was no one in sight, but I could feel the presence of something or someone hiding in the shadows. The hotel felt different tonight. The air was dense, charged with something I couldn't put into words. I had to push those feelings down. I had to focus. I had the key. I had the evidence. I just needed to get into that room, get the ledger, and get the hell out. We moved quickly, entering the hotel with our eyes scanning every corner. The familiar creaks of the old wood beneath our feet felt like a countdown. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, the walls narrowing, closing in. I could feel the walls watching me, whispering old secrets I wasn't ready to hear. We reached the back door, the one Lena had described. It was locked, just like she said it would be, but the key fit perfectly in the lock. I turned it, and the door creaked open. Inside, the room was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of the hall lights. Dust particles floated lazily in the air. There, in the corner, was a heavy metal chest, locked, just like Lena had warned. I approached it cautiously, my fingers cold as I reached for the key in my pocket. When I turned the key in the chest's lock, the sound it made echoed through the silence, like the final click of a clock before everything fell apart. Inside the chest were files, photographs, records, contracts, each one more damning than the last. I rifled through them, my hands shaking slightly. There it was, the ledger, the one that Jenkins had been hiding, the one that tied everything together. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of everything it represented. The years of corruption, the lives ruined, the deals made in the shadows, and the families destroyed. My daughter was caught in the middle of it all. Then I heard it. The soft sound of footsteps behind me. I spun around, but no one was there, just the same empty hallway. My heart was racing, the adrenaline flooding my system. I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel it. I heard you were looking for this. The voice was low, almost a whisper, but I knew it immediately. Malcolm Jenkins. I turned quickly, my hand instinctively reaching for the gun I kept at my side. But before I could pull it, he stepped out of the shadows, his figure tall and menacing. "You really think you can take me down, Ryan?" Jenkins said, his voice a venomous rasp. "You start nothing but a washed-up old DA who thought he could play hero. You stuff always been too late." His words cut deep. Too late. That's what I'd always been, too late to save that innocent man. Too late to fix the mistakes I'd made. I held up the ledger, the pages fluttering in the wind. "Its setup is over, Jenkins. The evidence is here." "You said or done." Jenkins smiled, the grin stretching unnaturally across his face. "You think you Seb won? You think because you found that ledger, you Seb got me cornered. You Seb not the first person to try and take me down, Ryan. And you won to be the last." I took a step back, the cold sweat dripping down my neck. "You'll never get away with it," I said, my voice shaking, but determined. "Not if you keep walking around like a ghost, Ryan," Jenkins replied, his eyes narrowing. "You still never live long enough to see the end." I wasn't sure what his threat meant yet, but I knew one thing: he was right. He'd already played this game before. He knew the stakes. But this time, I wasn't going to be too late. The room felt smaller now. The walls were closing in, suffocating me. Jenkins stood there, his presence larger than life, the shadows clinging to him like an extension of his own twisted soul. Every word he spoke seemed to reverberate through the dimly lit hallway, echoing off the cold ancient stone. "You think this changes anything?" he said, his smile widening as he stepped closer. "That ledger? It's Sep's just paper. Nothing more." I gripped it tighter, my knuckles white. The truth was staring me in the face, but Jenkins didn't seem afraid. I thought this moment would feel like victory, but instead, it felt like the calm before the storm. His words were calculated, methodical. He wasn't just a criminal, he was the master of this game. "You Sif already lost, Ryan. You Sif are too late," he repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "You don't Siffer know how deep this goes. How long I Siffer been in control. You think this ledger means something? It Siffer's only one piece of the puzzle. I Siffer been here longer than you Siffer realized." I took a step back, my heart racing. But the words didn't make sense. It was like the ground beneath me was shifting, and I couldn't find my footing. "I have the evidence," I said, the words coming out more forcefully than I felt. "And you said Turt not getting away with it. This time I said in taking you down." Jenkins chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "You Citra delusional? Your daughter? Emily? She sits already a part of this. You just haven't seen it yet." My stomach dropped. The coldness in his voice hit me like a slap across the face. What did he mean? I turned, looking at the door where Vera had been standing, but she was gone. I hadn't noticed it, but I felt it now. Her absence. She wasn't in the room anymore. "Where Siptis Vera?" I demanded, panic setting in. "What did you do to her?" Jenkins didn't answer. Instead, he slowly stepped aside, his eyes glinting with something dark. Behind him, I saw something I hadn't expected. There, standing in the doorway, was Emily. Her eyes were wide, scanning the room, but her posture was stiff. She didn't seem surprised to see her father. She didn't seem afraid. She didn't seem anything. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a moment I felt a sharp pang of betrayal. What was she doing here? "Emily?" I said, my voice shaking as I reached out to her. "What desp's going on? What are you doing here?" She didn't respond immediately. She didn't even move, as if caught in some strange trance. Jenkins watched us, his smirk never fading. "Don't waste your breath, Ryan," Jenkins said, his voice mocking. "She Sep's already made her choice." Emily Sep's lips trembled, her fingers clenching into fists at her sides. "You don't understand, Dad," she finally said, her voice quiet, almost distant. I have been working with him, with them, the syndicate. The words hit like a punch to the gut. The world around me tilted. No, this couldn't be happening. Not Emily. Not my daughter. You what? My voice broke, but I couldn't stop it. Why? Why would you? I didn't have a choice, she interrupted, her eyes finally meeting mine. They had their hands in everything, Dad. The money, the hotel, the people you has been trying to protect. They been controlling everything, and it's done part of it now. I too deep. The shock that coursed through me was suffocating. She wasn't the same girl I raised. She wasn't the rebellious daughter I tried to protect. This Emily was someone else. Someone who had been broken by forces I didn't understand. Jenkins stepped forward, his hand on Emily Sepp's shoulder like a sinister father figure. She Sepp's mine now, Ryan, he said with a finality that sent chills down my spine. And you can save her. You never could. She Sepp's just another player in the game. You failed her. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to do something. But I was paralyzed, not by fear but by the overwhelming weight of the truth. I will save her, I said, my voice low but filled with raw emotion. I once let you turn her into one of your pawns. Jenkins laughed, the sound echoing like a twisted melody. You think you still have control over this? The only thing you control now, Ryan, is how this story ends. And trust me, it's already written. I stared at Emily, my heart breaking as I saw the resignation in her eyes. The same look I had when I'd given up on fixing the past. The same look that had haunted me all these years. She was lost. But she wasn't gone yet. I couldn't give up on her. Not now. Not after everything we'd been through. Not after everything I had done to get here. Emily, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and desperation. You stir not one of them. You don't have to be. She turned her head slightly, avoiding my gaze. But I could see it, the flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. She hadn't fully given herself to this life. She hadn't fully crossed that line, and that was my chance. I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the ledger in my hands. The documents I'd uncovered, the truths that had taken me to this point had to be enough, but I needed more, the final piece. I had to expose Jenkins, no matter the cost. You think you won? I said, my voice stronger now. But you haven't not yet. This is over. Jenkins tilted his head, his eyes glinting with malice. It was over the moment you stepped foot in here. But I wasn't backing down. I had the evidence, I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let my daughter be consumed by this monster. As I stared at Emily, something shifted. I saw it, the smallest spark of resistance. Maybe she wasn't as lost as Jenkins thought. Maybe she could still find her way out of this. The game wasn't over. Not yet. The fallout from that moment with Emily was like an explosion, one that shook the very foundation of everything I thought I knew. I couldn't escape the crushing weight of her betrayal, of realizing that the daughter I thought I was protecting had already been swallowed whole by the syndicate. I wanted to scream, to lash out. But I couldn't. I couldn't risk making it worse. I watched as she stood there, her eyes locked with mine for just a second, before she turned away. I felt the sting of it, the finality of it. She wasn't mine anymore. Not in the way I thought she was. She was just another part of Jenkins' empire, another cog in the machine. And I had failed her. But failure wasn't something I was willing to accept. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't let her go, even if it meant tearing down everything to get her back. I left the hotel in a daze. Vobra wasn't with me. I didn't even know where she had gone. For a moment I thought I'd imagined everything. The confrontation with Jenkins, Emily's cold defection, but the evidence, the weight of it was real. It was all real. I made my way back to the small office I had rented in town. It was empty, quiet. I sat behind the desk, the ledger spread out in front of me like the pieces of a broken life, scattered across the page. Jenkins had won, at least for now. But I couldn't give up. I wouldn't. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the caller ID, not surprised to see Mark's name. I need to talk to you. His voice was blunt, no pleasantries. What is it? I asked, trying to steady my breathing. I was on edge, still reeling from the evening's events. We have to act fast, Mark said. The syndicate sift is not going to wait around for you to make a move. We have a chance, just one chance, to take them down. I sat up straight, my pulse quickening. What do you mean? Mark hesitated, then spoke carefully. Sep got a lead, a source inside the syndicate. Someone who Sep's been feeding me information. But it's Sep's dangerous, Ryan. We Sep's pushing all our chips into one pot here. And if we're wrong, we're dead. I finished for him, the weight of his words sinking in. Exactly. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus. What Sep's the lead? There's a shipment coming through tomorrow, Mark said. It's Sep, too's a big one. Weapons, money, the whole damn operation. They Sep using the hotel as a front to move everything. But there's Sep but's more. Emily is on the list to handle the delivery. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Emily? She was still involved. She was still playing their game. I didn't have a choice anymore. I had to get to her. I had to stop it. I couldn't afford to be careful. It wasn't just about the syndicate anymore. It was about her. I sup scum going, I said, standing up and pacing. Where do I meet you? Wait, Mark said quickly, his voice sharp. This isn't supping something you walk into. They sup be watching. You need to be smarter than that. We need to plan this out together. No impulsive moves. I took a deep breath, trying to control the anger building up inside me. I don't have time to plan. She Set's involved in this now, Mark. She Set's already deep enough to get herself hurt. And I Set's not waiting around while she falls further into their web. You don't have to do this alone, Mark said, his voice softening. You have people who care about you, Ryan, who will help. I paused. The weight of his words cut through my anger. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about saving Emily. You stir right, I said quietly. I said climbing, but you need to be ready. We move fast. No hesitation. I hung up the phone and walked toward the door. My mind was racing with plans, but it wasn't enough. I needed to be strategic. Jenkins wouldn't just let me walk in and take the evidence. There was a storm brewing, and I could feel it in my gut. The next morning, I gathered the evidence, documents, the photographs, the contracts. Everything I had on the syndicate was in my hands. I had the leverage. Now it was time to make my move. When I reached the hotel, it was quieter than before, like the calm before the storm. I knew Jenkins was already preparing for the shipment, ready to finalize whatever deal he had in the works. He had no idea what I was about to do. I walked into the lobby and straight to the back office. Everything had changed, but I was still here, still fighting. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. The plan had to be perfect. There was no room for error now. Every step I took, every move I made, carried the weight of everything I had fought for, and everything I had lost. The hotel loomed in front of me, its old stone facade now more menacing than ever. The dark windows seemed to watch me as I approached, the silence inside thick with the knowledge that everything was about to come crashing down. I wasn't alone this time. Mark and Vera were with me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of unity. We weren't just fighting for justice anymore. We were fighting for Emily. Ready? Mark asked. His voice steady, though I could see the tension in his eyes. Let's do it, I replied, my voice resolute. The plan was simple but dangerous. We had the evidence, documents, photographs, contracts, everything we needed to expose the syndicate's operations. But the final piece was in Emily's hands. She was the one who could confirm everything. We weren't going in blind, but it felt like it. Every step I took toward that front door felt like a step into the unknown. I wasn't sure if I was walking toward redemption or my own destruction. The first part of the plan went off without a hitch. We made it inside undetected. The lobby was eerily quiet, like the calm before the storm. We knew the shipment would be arriving soon, and we had to get to Emily before it was too late. Where is she? I asked Vera, my voice low. Third floor, she said, checking her watch. She's supposed to meet with Jenkins and finalize the deal. If we don't sit act fast, we sit I'll lose her. My chest tightened at the thought. I couldn't lose her. Not now, not after everything I'd done. We moved swiftly up the creaky staircase and down the narrow hallway toward the third floor. The tension was suffocating. Every footstep felt like it echoed through the building, a reminder that time was running out. We reached the door. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the handle. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. I pushed the door open, and there she was. Emily. Her back was to us, but she turned when she heard the door creak. Her eyes met mine, and for a split second there was a flicker of something I hadn't seen before, a glimmer of recognition, a hint of something that wasn't all lost. "Dad," she whispered, her voice shaky, "what are you doing here?" I didn't answer immediately. I couldn't, the words were stuck in my throat. I had so many things I wanted to say, but they didn't matter now, not as much as what I needed to do. "Emily, please," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't said have to do this. You don't said have to be part of this anymore." She shook her head, a cold smile tugging at her lips. "You don't said understand, Dad. I set them already in too deep. There's septs no way out for me now." I stepped closer, desperation creeping into my voice. "You don't stead have to stay with them, Emily. You stir not one of them, you stirred my daughter. You can still get out of this." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the girl I once knew, but then it was gone, replaced by the cold, distant person she had become. I can set," she whispered. "They have control over me, over everything." I reached out for her, but she stepped back, her hands trembling. "A few I'm not doing this for them, Emily," I said, my voice raw. "A few I'm doing this for you, for us, for the family we once were." She looked down at the ground, her fists clenched at her sides. "I don't miss that know who I am anymore, Dad," she said, the words heavy with guilt and regret. "I don't miss that know who I has been supposed to be." I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "You start, my daughter. You start, always been my daughter. And that sep's all that matters." For the first time, I saw it. The flicker of hope in her eyes. It wasn't too late. I could still save her. Before she could respond, the door behind her burst open, and Jenkins walked in, his smug grin on his face. "You really thought you could just walk in here and take her away from me, Ryan?" he sneered, his tone dripping with malice. "You set her too late, you set her already lost." But I wasn't backing down. I was done running, done waiting for the right moment. This was it. I held up the ledger, the weight of it suddenly feeling lighter. The evidence was all there, and I wasn't going to let Jenkins control this narrative any longer. "You have lost, Jenkins," I said, my voice strong and steady. "The game is over. We have everything we need to take you down. You are finished." Jenkins' smile faded, his eyes narrowing in anger. "You think you can just expose me? You have no idea what you set her up against." I didn't flinch. I know exactly what I sent him up against. He lunged at me, but I was ready. I pulled out the phone, already dialed into the police. The call went through, and I spoke quickly, my words coming out in a rush. "We have everything," I said into the phone. "We need backup, now. The syndicate is here. We need to arrest them." Jenkins froze, his eyes wide in disbelief. He realized too late that I was 2 steps ahead. The door slammed open behind him, and officers flooded the room. The weight of the moment crashed down on us like a wave. It was over. Jenkins was cuffed, his smug arrogance replaced by fear. The police had everything they needed. Everything, but the real victory wasn't in the arrest. It was in the look that passed between Emily and me. For the first time in a long while, she saw it, the truth. And for the first time, I felt like I had saved her. The trial was over. The syndicate had fallen. Jenkins, Blackwell, and the others were behind bars, their empire crumbling around them. For a moment it felt like victory, like a long, hard battle had finally reached its end. But when the dust settled, when the courtroom doors closed, there was still a hollow feeling inside me. It wasn't the justice that was missing. It was the years I had spent trying to outrun my mistakes, trying to fix things that had already been broken. Emily, she wasn't the same. She couldn't be. But maybe, just maybe, we could begin again. We stood together in the courtroom as the verdict was read. For once, I didn't feel the weight of my past on my shoulders. For once, the world didn't feel like it was closing in. There was a chance now. A real chance to rebuild. Not just for me, but for Emily. She had changed, but I had too. The reporters swarmed the courthouse, cameras flashing, asking questions, desperate for the story. They wanted the drama, the twists, the betrayals. But all I wanted was peace. I wanted to hold on to the small shred of normalcy we had left. I turned to Emily as we left the courthouse, the crowd buzzing around us. She was quieter now, her eyes not as distant as they had been. The walls between us had started to crack, though I knew it would take time to heal the wounds. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for everything." My heart broke a little, but in a way that made sense. A painful kind of growth. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it was okay, that it wasn't too late for us. But we both knew it wasn't that simple. "I know, Em," I replied, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. "You don't have to apologize. We set both been through a lot, but we set get through it. Together." She nodded, her eyes still clouded with the weight of everything she'd been through. But there was hope in her expression now, a flicker of light that hadn't been there before. Maybe I hadn't lost her after all. Maybe there was a chance to fix what had been broken. That night we sat together at the dinner table, something we hadn't done in years. The room was quiet, save for the soft clink of silverware. The meal wasn't fancy. It wasn't anything special, but it was real. It was ours. I looked at Emily, sitting across from me, and I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was the beginning of us healing, of us finding a way back to each other, despite everything. "You think it's over?" she asked. Her voice tinged with curiosity, but also something deeper, something darker. "I mean, the syndicate stuff's gone, the police are taking care of the rest, but are we really done?" I paused, staring at her. The question wasn't just about the syndicate, it was about us. About what we had been through, and whether we could ever truly be free from it. "No," I said, my voice calm but sure. "We set her not done, but we set her find a way to move forward together." She smiled a little, the edges of her lips lifting. It wasn't a full smile, but it was enough. It was enough to show me that there was still something left to fight for. The past wouldn't disappear overnight. The scars would remain, but we were both still standing, and in the end that was all that mattered. As the night wore on, I found myself reflecting on the journey. The lies, the betrayals, the pain. But through it all, there had been one constant justice, not just in the courtroom, but in my own heart. I had spent so many years running from the past, trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed. But in the end, it wasn't about the past, it was about the future, the one we were still building. "You didn't lose me," I whispered to myself, as if the words could heal the wounds. "You gave me away." It was the truth I had to accept, the truth I had to make peace with, but it was also the truth I could now move on from. The future was waiting, and I wasn't running anymore. Months had passed since the trial, since the dust had settled and the world had moved on. The headlines faded, the reporters stopped asking questions, and the police continued their work, but I didn't feel the same. I had thought that exposing the syndicate would bring closure, that it would finally give me peace. But the truth was, peace wasn't something you could get from the outside. It was something you had to find within. Emily and I had started to rebuild, slowly but surely. The days were still hard, and the memories were sharp, but we were learning how to be a family again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that, for now, was enough. I found myself thinking a lot about the future, about the choices we had to make now that everything had changed. Emily wasn't the same girl I had once known, and neither was I, but maybe that was the point. Maybe the person we were meant to be was the one we were now, after everything had happened. The one who had survived. I watched Emily one morning as she sat by the window, staring out at the horizon. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a soft glow over the city. I knew she was still grappling with the weight of what had happened, but she was stronger now, more determined. and for the first time in a long while I saw hope in her eyes. She turned to me as I walked into the room, a small, hesitant smile on her lips. "Do you think we can ever fully heal from all of this?" she asked quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I paused, considering her question. "I think healing isn't something you do all at once. It's something you do every day. Little by little." She nodded, her eyes softening. "I want to believe that." "You will," I said, walking over to her and sitting beside her. "We both will." The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was calm, peaceful even. We were both learning how to navigate this new chapter, not just as father and daughter, but as two people who had gone through hell and back, and were finally finding their way back to each other. As the weeks passed, I found myself reaching out to the people I had shut out for so long. Mark, Vera, even the people who had worked with me during my time as a district attorney. I had spent too many years in isolation trying to punish myself for things I couldn't undo. It was time to reconnect, to build bridges instead of burning them. One afternoon, Mark called. "How's everything?" he asked, his voice warm and familiar. "We are getting there," I said, smiling as I looked over at Emily, who was busy working at the kitchen table. "Slowly, but we are getting there." "Good," Mark replied. "You know, I never thought I would see the day when Jenkins would be behind bars, but I guess you sipped are full of surprises, Ryan." I chuckled softly, the tension I had carried for so long finally starting to loosen. "I didn't do it alone, but I'm glad it's over." "For now," Mark said. "You have got a long road ahead of you, but I have got a feeling you be just fine." I paused, reflecting on his words. "Yeah," I said finally. "I think I will be." And just like that, I felt it. The last piece of the puzzle falling into place. I had spent so long running from the past, from the guilt and the mistakes I had made. But now I was looking ahead, at the life I could still build, the future that was still waiting for me. The journey wasn't over. But it was different now. Emily and I were different, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of what came next. As the days continued to unfold, I watched Emily grow stronger, more independent, and more at peace with herself. And I realized that in many ways she had already forgiven me. She had forgiven us both for the things we couldn't change. We didn't need the past anymore. We had each other, and that was enough. It had been several months since the syndicate's downfall, since the dust had settled and the world had moved on. But I knew better than to believe that everything was truly finished. I had learned a long time ago that some things never really go away. The ghosts of the past, the shadows lurking just beneath the surface, have a way of reminding you they're still there even when you least expect it. I was sitting in my office one afternoon, going over some paperwork. Nothing major, just the usual routine. Emily was in the next room working on her own projects, her world gradually returning to some semblance of normalcy. She had started taking over some of the hotel's remaining operations, cleaning up what was left of the mess her impulsive decision had created. It was a far cry from the chaos of the past, and I could tell she was starting to breathe again. But the peace was fleeting. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with a message. The name at the top made my stomach churn. It was from Mark. "Meet me at the old warehouse. We've got something." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat, told Emily I'd be back in a few hours, and left without another word. The warehouse wasn't far from the hotel, just a few blocks away, but as I walked there, the unsettling feeling in my gut only grew. When I arrived, Mark was already there, standing by the large rusted door. His expression was grim, but there was something more behind it, a look I hadn't seen in months. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping up to him. The warehouse was silent, the air thick with tension. Mark didn't speak right away. He opened the door, revealing a small, dimly lit room inside. There in the center was a box, metal, sealed, and marked with the same logo that had once graced the syndicate's operations. The logo that had haunted me for so long. "Open it," Mark said quietly. I hesitated. My heart was pounding in my chest. "What sips this?" "The final piece," he replied. "The one thing we missed." I took a deep breath and knelt down, unlocking the box with trembling hands. Inside I found what I feared most. A file, old, yellowed, but with a fresh seal. as if it had only just been placed there. I flipped it open, my eyes scanning the pages. The words blurred for a moment, but then it hit me. The truth. The truth I had been trying to bury. The truth about the syndicate's final plan. I stared at the paper, my pulse quickening as I read the details. A hidden account, a final payment, and in the margins a name I didn't expect to see, Emily Mitchell. I stumbled back, the file slipping from my hands. What is this? No. Mark Sepp's eyes met mine. I'm sorry, Ryan. Sepp's not over. This was always the final play. What the hell are you talking about? I demanded, panic rising in my chest. This was supposed to be done. We set safe. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. She doesn't know. She doesn't know about the deal she signed. It's in the fine print. Everything she inherited from the hotel was tied to this. Jenkins set it up years ago. The real deal, the one that could keep the syndicate alive, and now it's all coming back. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I grabbed the file, my hands shaking as I scanned the information. There was no mistake. Jenkins had planted the seeds of his empire in Emily's hands without her even realizing it. The syndicate had never truly lost control. They had just been waiting for the right moment to reclaim what was theirs. This was the final irony. Is she in danger? I asked, my voice a mix of fear and disbelief. Mark nodded grimly. She doesn't set no, Ryan, but we need to get ahead of this now. I rushed out of the warehouse, my mind racing. I had spent so long thinking I was done, thinking I had saved her, but now everything had shifted. The past wasn't over, and Emily wasn't free. Not yet. Not until I could figure out how to undo what Jenkins had put into motion years ago. By the time I reached the hotel, I was already several steps ahead in my mind. There was a plan. There had to be. I found Emily sitting in the same spot I had left her, still focused on her work. She looked up as I entered, her eyes softening when she saw the worry etched on my face. Dad, that's wrong. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. It's not over, Em. There's something you need to know. I held up the file, the truth staring us both in the face. The world around me seemed to stop, the air growing heavy with the realization that everything we thought we had been through, the end of the syndicate, the justice we had fought for, was just the beginning of a much darker chapter. I am not going to let this destroy us, Emily, I said, my voice unwavering, but we have to face it together. She stared at the file, her face pale as the truth set in. The weight of the legacy we were trapped in pressed down on both of us. But we weren't going to let it break us, not now. The ghosts of the past weren't done with us. But this time we were ready. We would face them together.